Welcome, everyone, to the Retro Chat Podcast. I'm Andy Evans, coming to you live right here in Weymouth and Dorset on the South Coast on what was a glorious day of potentially sun. Don't know. I was in the office all day, so I haven't got a clue. I was training. Joining me to my right is a newcomer to the Retro Chat Podcast, but not a newcomer to the world of podcasting, because he was one of the original Triple Threat who set up the Total Wrestling Show along with myself and the MC with Socks, Dan Barnstable. He is now the lead host and producer of the SNL podcast, Smarks and Ladders. Please welcome Steve Grieve. How you doing, my friend?
Well, thank you very much for that wonderful introduction, Andy Evans. Do you normally start your shows with a moan and a whinge?
Yes.
Yeah. Some things haven't changed then. It's good to see.
20 years. What, 20 years? 20 years?
Yeah.
No, not 20 years. That would mean we met when I was 11. 10. No, about 10 years now. 10, 11 years, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, 10 years.
Yeah. But we started TWS back in 2010. So, yeah, about 11 years. Yeah. Jesus. God, I feel old.
I mean, it's a long time. You know, when I start to talk about things like that, it doesn't half make me age. I'm 40 next month. And I'm
I am as well.
Where did that go?
The day before you.
Yeah, the day before me. You're older than by one day.
Yeah, shut up. How you been keeping, my friend?
Yeah, do you know what? Not doing too bad. I'm living to look. I might have coffee and stuff, but it's caffeine free. So I'm always tired. I don't get my caffeine fix, not even in my fizzy drinks. It's a way of life now. No caffeine. But apart from that, yeah, doing really good. Been decorating recently, not a fan of that. But been doing some great work with my dog charity that I work with as well.
Fantastic. Good on you. Tell us more about the dog charity.
Okay, they're called Pound Puppy Animal Rescue. They're based down here in Dorset, and they sort of cover the Dorset, Wiltshire area.
Yeah.
A lot of the dogs we bring over or rescue are from like Romania and Spain, and some of them are the Eastern European countries that don't really look after dogs particularly well. Not how we look after dogs. I don't want to besmirch them at all. And yeah, one of them's napping right next to me now, an old boy that I'm keeping forever.
Oh, bless him.
Well, my old Rocky.
Send us the details. We'll put links in the description on all of our social medias to the charity to see if anyone can support them and adopt a dog.
It'd be amazing. It'd be absolutely amazing. If anyone happens to be, I'm plugging now, anyone happens to be around in the Bournemouth area on Bank Holiday Monday, this coming up Bank Holiday Monday, the 30th, we are doing a dog show. Our first charity raise we've been able to do since this whole COVID thing. So it's going to be
fantastic.
Really, really good. Thank you for that.
Shout the website. What's the website address?
poundpuppyrescue.co.uk. Wow. God, I can't believe I remembered that.
No, I can't believe you remember that.
Search it on Facebook. We get more updates on Facebook than you do the website.
I can't believe you remembered it because you could never remember the contact details for TWS back in the day.
No, do you know what? That's one skill I've really had to learn because my two other co-hosts on Smarks and Ladders aren't great at remembering it either.
So before we get into our talking point this week, which is Shawn Michaels, let's give everybody a bit of a recap of who you are. Because back in 2010, the MC was Socks, Dan Barnstable, a regular here at Retro Chat. Never going to do another podcast, he says. Never going to do another show. And he's been on mine. We're coming up to about 4 times.
Yep.
Now, plus the beards. Plus Smarks and Ladders. You know, you just can take the man away from the microphone, but it will always follow him. We started out, we formed TWS back in the January, and I think it was podcast only to start, wasn't it? That's all we were going to do.
Yeah, we were podcast only. We did 3, I believe, until the Rumble, and that's when we went live.
To Rumble, if I remember it.
Live to Rumble.
Why did we do that? We had no idea what we were doing.
No, it was a crazy time. I remember the opening of the first show being about a news story about Mark Henry, Mae Young, that whole birth of the hand thing. And all I can remember doing is just repeating everything anyone said.
Do you know what? I found when TWS went 100, which was a great night. I remember that. We did Appletinis and a load of different things, and we welcomed Toby onto the show. I remember I did an intro for it, and it was like a historical look back at the first 100 shows. And I put the comment in, I think it was Dan, and I can't remember what he said, but it was so awkward, like listening to it. And then where you all came afterwards was good. I mean, let's not beat around the bush. You and I weren't the most consistent members of TWS in its run. I think you left before me. Then I left, then you came back, then I left, then you came back, then you left and I didn't come back, and then Dan took over. But the time that we were on air, I mean, we really did kind of take the banner of wrestling radio and kind of elevated it up to the next level. It was what Lee and I had started on TSC and LAC and MOS, and then we really kind of carried that on afterwards and took it into a new stratosphere.
Yeah, I think so. I think with TWS, I feel for us that we didn't take anything too seriously. We weren't there to, be childish about it. We were having fun. We were being entertaining, but at the same time, we weren't mostly, apart from the MC with stocks, weren't too as structured to it. So it had a little bit more of a flow, a bit of fun to it, and I think it gave something alternative. To MOS and Dropkick, who were good old Jeremy that were going at the time.
Yeah, both. Let's put it out there. Both are fantastic shows. Competition wise or not, whatever happened is in the past. Between the three of us, and let's get that out there now, because I'm still getting tweets, guys. I'm still getting comments about you're doing stuff with Ministry. Yes, I am doing stuff with Ministry. Does it really make a difference? If I go on Ministry of Slam or something like that, does it really matter?
Well, no. At the end of the day, we're all individuals. We choose our own paths.
Yeah.
TWS, isn't running anymore. It had a fantastic run. TWS in its all entirety never took a break. It went pretty much every week for 9 years. I want to say 8.5, 9 years in the end. It
was nine. Yeah, I think it was just about to come up to 10. And it's really funny where you said it never took a break. My God, there were weeks it should have done, or weeks where it pretty much almost never aired.
Yeah, there were times like that. I remember times when I produced it. Never. Sometimes didn't have because I never pressed the go button. Yeah.
But isn't it interesting before we hit Shawn, because we're going to talk about yours in a minute and we'll talk more about Smarks and Ladders in a second, but isn't it interesting how podcast has changed since even we started? Because I started doing this back in 2007. I started doing TSC, then it was MOS, and then TWS, and then Two Men and the Mics, and now Retro Chat. So I've kind of done pretty much everything. You've done TWS, then you did Revolution.
Revolution, yeah.
Wrestlemania Revolution. And now you're doing Smarks and Ladders. And we're so used to doing it either in studio, is as a 3D real life, sat around a microphone, talking into that, or on Skype or on the phone. And since the pandemic, it's really moved podcasting forward, because now every man and his dog has got a podcast. And it's video.
It's very true. I've been having this discussion with quite a few people who've sort of said, how do you get podcasting? And I went, to be fair, I said, when we started 11 years ago, it wasn't that easy.
No.
The platforms to work with, the broadcasters were very minimal that you had to work with. Some of the technology was quite dated. It wasn't easy to podcast, especially live. But now I just, I currently use Podbean at the moment. And we record a show, I put it on Podbean, and it just off it goes, done. No aggro. I don't have a website that I build or maintain, or, it's so much easier to podcast now than I think it ever used to be.
And the equipment is so much better because, I remember back when we first started, we had to go out and buy a Windows XP machine.
Yeah.
Had to actually go and source a Windows XP desktop. We then had to get a Euro rack or a mixer, plus the XLR microphones with the stands, with the cables, and that was before you even had the software. Then you had to go and get a Sound Broadcaster or another version of a broadcasting software. Then you had to pay for stream hosting, so you had to pay for the live stream just to be able to go out on the air, which was 9 out of 10 times wasn't reliable. Then you had to pay for website hosting to put the MP3s onto it. And to record a show, the prep used to take about an hour just to set up Sam with all the, the intros, the outros, the ad breaks, the this and that. Then you had about another hour after that editing it to get all the hissing out and all that type of thing. And then another hour after that, uploading it up to the server
so
and doing the website. You know, it was just, why did we do it?
It's crazy. It must have been for love, because there is no other reason.
It wasn't for money.
It definitely wasn't for money. There's no reason why we would have put ourselves through that. But when I look back on it, to be honest, you know, you look at, there were some fantastic times, and some of the names and people that came on the show and were interviewed, you know, like my first interview I ever did on any podcast already was TWS, was with you and Al Snow. And, you know, that's going to be in my memory forever. I'm permanently happy to have that memory of interviewing Al Snow and not marking out too much, maybe a bit, but not marking out too much.
Yeah, I remember you marked out a little bit just at the beginning, but what I can remember about that interview is because I'd interviewed him before. And when we were talking the preamble before we went, right, we're going to press the button, we're going to go live now, he was grumpy as anything. Mm-hmm. He didn't want to be there. He didn't want to talk. And then all of a sudden that red light came on and the pro started, and he just, you know, just arrived.
But I think later, it was like for an hour.
Yeah, I know. It's like DDP. You know, we could still be talking to DDP at this point. But I think for you, the biggest success you had on TWS, and when you think about where this guy has gone, where he's been, and where he's going, is Adam Cole, baby. Because if I'm right, TWS was the first show to get a monthly episodic interview with Adam Cole as part of the Wrestling Road Diaries when he was in Ring of Honor, up until the point he signed with the WWE.
It was, if I remember right, if I remember the name of the show, we were doing IPV, Independent Point of View.
Yeah, bloody hell, yeah.
As a spin-off from TWS with long-term listener Paul York.
Yeah.
One
of the many spin-offs.
And he came aboard on that, and you know, we got Adam Cole on for an interview, and Paul took a step back. It's like, no, you do the interview, and I was like, yeah, no problem. So we sat there and chatting to Adam Cole, and then I think sort of an idea came up between us three that we might try and pick a wrestler that we could, you know, follow. How interesting would it be to see a wrestler develop through the year? What shows would they go to? And we were, you know, looking at the local British guys, and then I think I turned around and said, well, why don't we try Adam Cole? This guy's just breaking through in Ring of Honor, you know. And I think we'd all agreed at that point, and a lot of people agreed this is the you know, the next version of who we're going to be talking about later on in the show, Mr. Shawn Michaels.
Yeah.
Why don't we approach him? And I was so surprised he said yes.
But what a testament! So we had him. I think we had him for about 10 episodes, I want to say, and then it kind of, you could tell as he was getting bigger. You know, he won the ROH World Title. He was then beginning not to return our emails, but as you do, and obviously he met Britt, so I'm just playing it all on Britt Baker. But you know, he then went.
Right there, sorry, you didn't say it right. It's
DMD.
Britt Baker. DMD.
Oh,
she's so over.
You can only see it on the video. You can only see it on the video. Oh, excuse me.
I want to talk.
You want to talk? Oh, we've got a guest spot. Can you say hello?
Hello, we've got a run in.
Got a run in. Hey, there we go. Right. You say bye-bye to the listeners. Everest. Bye-bye to the listeners.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
There
Okay. She's shutting the door, ladies and gentlemen. So that was a run in by my daughter. As it happens. Thank you very much. I know I am, you know, but you don't have to keep telling me that. It's great. Yeah, I mean, it was phenomenal, and we did a great job, and it's a lot of good memories of TWS. But you know, moving on from that, you know, you're now back on air after taking a break Thursdays on Podbean at the moment, or all good providers of podcasts, including Apple, including Stitcher, Spotify, etc., with your new show, Smarks and Ladders.
Yeah, do you know what? I took a big break between Wrestlemania Revolution and doing Smarks and Ladders. And when I started WRR Live, as it became known, you know, there was a discussion of maybe being involved with TWS. And I was like, that would be cool, but actually I want to try and do something on my own. Yeah. We did 4 years, surprisingly. It took me I was working out the other day because obviously you keep getting those reminders on Facebook about things you've done and stuff. And we've done that for 4 years. And then the mixer went, unfortunately. And we never really got a chance to get back together and do it. But there was always an idea that it was going to continue. And then I was like, do you know what? I want to bring something back, but I don't want it to be 3 letters. That was the big thing for me. You know, so historically in the past, there'd been, as you said, TWS, MOS, WRR. Do you know what I mean? Everything was 3 letters. WWE, WCW, TNA, you know, ECW, AEW. Everything was 3 letters. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And so I was just bouncing around with a couple of friends some names. And all of a sudden they said, so you don't want it to sound like a wrestling name? And I said, but I kind of want it to sound like a wrestling name. So they went, why didn't you do Snakes and Ladders? I was like, I can work with that. And that's when we come up with Smarks and Ladders instead. And I was just like, that's just kind of entertaining and fun for me.
It's quite clever as well, because it's really clever marketing, because your Twitter handle, which you can see on screen, is S and the word and L podcast. You said you don't want 3 initials, but actually it's SNL.
Yeah, I know.
So if you want to look at it that way, it's Saturday Night Live.
I couldn't get away with SNL because of Saturday Night Live.
But, you know, it's Smarks and Ladders, SNL. And that's...
Still stuck with it, really, aren't I?
You're never going to get away with
it. Though, in the show is Sand L Podcast. At least that way it sounds a bit different.
It's a Sandal podcast.
Yeah, it's a Sand L Podcast, yeah.
So you're live on Thursday. Well, you're not live. Your podcast, you available on a Thursday.
That's
every
right.
week.
Yeah, generally speaking, as long as, you know, nothing goes wrong, every show is available from Thursday morning every week.
Yeah. And what do you do? Do you cover the current product? Is it retro stuff? Do you have a heavy focus on AEW or WWE, or is it universal?
It kind of depends on what's happened that week, to be honest. We released the podcast on Saturday, slightly late this week. Like I said, it's not always Thursday, most of the time. But it was a SummerSlam.
There's a good reason for that.
Yeah, SummerSlam preview, and we wanted to get all the information together first before we did that. Instead of recording it on a Wednesday night or a Thursday morning, we wanted to make sure that we'd got through SmackDown and stuff like that to eventually get to where we were to be able to preview SummerSlam. Doesn't happen all that often, though. But I mean, like a lot of stuff I'd say is kind of up to date. It's kind of breaking news stories. But we've had a look back at like Joey the King Lawler's career. That was a great retrospective look back. We've looked back at like the start from AEW and some of the shows as well. So not necessarily what AEW are doing right now, but where did they start from? You know, and then their first year, how much did they grow and things like that. So, you know, it's kind of a mix of both. I would say it's more torn towards, you know, some of the modern day stuff that's going on. I mean, like loads of shows recently have been all about releases. So there's just some things you can't avoid.
It's normally a preview or release or a preview or release or a prediction. Yeah. And of course, you've had the MC with socks on a number of times.
Yeah, he came on, done an interview with us before. Someone's trying to drop him. Don't worry, Andy. I already had it in my head to sort out a date. You're coming on the show. You're coming on the show.
You've got to do a little bit of self-promotion here.
Yeah, no, he's done a couple of shows with us. He stepped in because one of our co-hosts, Franklin, had to take about a month off. He's had some homing issues with his landlord and stuff. Got him sorted now. He's back on the show this week, so it's going to be really good to have him back as well. So, yeah, Dan stepped up and did a show for us. Me and my other co-host, Sam Waring, did the SummerSlam one on our own. And even one show that me and Sam Waring tried to do on our own still got jumped on by Franklin because he'd done an interview with Future Shock at an LDN show. So there was no escaping him, really, even if he wasn't physically in the podcast that week. He's a
bit like Dan, though, isn't it? Even when you try to get rid of him, he always finds a way to come back. But, you know, there you go.
It really does.
Right, before we crack on with the main topic for this week, there's a couple of things that I do want to pick your brains on outside of, you know, self-promoting your ego and talking about you all the time for the last 20 minutes. This is what we've done.
Ego?
Yeah, you have. If you would like to subscribe to the show, you can do. All you need to do is go on to all of the main podcast providers. So Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. I keep wanting to call it iTunes, Amazon Music, Stitcher Radio, Spotify. I've said that one. Anchor, TuneIn, anyone. And search for Retro Chat Podcast, click subscribe, and you will get the latest podcasts as they come out. Now, yesterday, as we're recording this, the 23rd of August, we released the full schedule for September, which will be the main shows on a Monday and the bonus shows on a Friday. And that's going to be the new format going forward. So some of the things you've got looking forward to in September will be TSC From the Vault, where we're going to be speaking to Michael Cole. We're going to be launching the Legends and Champions podcast, which is the show that Lee and I did in the gap between the TSC ending and the Ministry of Slam launching. And it was 25 episodes focusing purely on the old school wrestling. And it's never been re-released since we did it. So this is the first time it's going to be airing. Yeah. So I cannot wait, because it's I thought I'd lost it, but Lee luckily had kept all 25 and graciously gave us the audio to use. If you want to follow us on social media, then you can do. All the details are on screen, but if Facebook and Instagram, search for Retro Chat Podcast. You can tweet us at Retro Chat Pod, and you can subscribe to us on YouTube, which is Retro Chat Podcast UK. Just about to hit the 400 mark in terms of followers. If you haven't already followed, please click that follow button. New videos will be released on a weekly basis, including the full video archives of the shows and Retro Play, where we will be taking a classic game and I will be very badly playing it, because that's what I do.
I've got to agree to that. I can attest to that completely. I remember SummerSlam a few years ago.
Let's not talk about that. Don't forget to set your goals, push your limits, and leave your legacy. It's Legacy Sports Nutrition. You can buy all of the vitamins that you need, as recommended by Nick Aldis, at legacysubs.com. And while we're talking about the NWA, don't forget that on August 28th and 29th, it's NWA 73 and NWA Empower available on Fight. If you missed the live, watch the encore, because just announced, as Nick teased in our interview last week, which is available in the archives, the greatest of all time, that ain't your boy, whoo, Ric Flair, is back at the Chase in St. Louis, Missouri, not only for an appearance, but will be in action as well. I don't quite know how I feel about that, but yet I want to see the pay-per-view to find out. And also, NWA Power exclusively on Fight each and every week. 1 hour, 60 minutes in studio wrestling with the great superstars of the NWA, available weekly on Fight. That's NWA Power. Dan,
well done on your plugs. Well done on your plugs.
Thank you. Need the sound effect now. So before we hit Shawn Michaels, let's quickly talk about Rampage, AEW Rampage on this past Friday night. I've not had a chance to speak to anybody yet. 2 weeks ago now, as we're releasing this, CM Punk made his debut in All Elite, made his return to professional wrestling. What was your take on it?
So, right, I've said on the show on Smarks and Ladders a couple of weeks beforehand, I was like, I'm not overly fussed if CM Punk comes back. You know, I don't know if he's got the value anymore. You know, it's been so many years now. You know, is he going to be difficult to manage like the stories that came out of WWE? I'm probably not that fussed. And then I put a disclaimer on the end of it saying, if Cult of Personality hits, I'm definitely going to hit the ceiling. And I did. I was just, fan came back out. Ignore Smark or whatever you want to, you know, just pure CM Punk fan just came flying out. And I was like, yes, this is amazing. I can't believe, because I still didn't believe it was even happening.
No, I didn't. There was a part of me that was like, nah, that it's going to be some sort of announcement, like he's going to be appearing at All Out. I thought he'd be there, but not on Rampage. I thought it would just be some sort of announcement. But when he came out, I mean, you and I have been wrestling fans for nigh on 30 odd years now, and I can't remember a pop like that. I mean, that was just a truly organic reaction by that capacity sold out crowd at the United Center in Chicago. When he walked out, I mean, it was so loud you couldn't hear the music. I can't even imagine what would have been going through Punk's brain, Punk's mind as he walked to that entrance ramp.
I have heard one other pop that was bigger than it.
Have you?
Yeah, it was when I returned to TWS. Boom.
And just like now, there's that tumbleweed going across the screen.
No, that's what happened when you came back.
Damn it.
No, I've got to admit, the crowd were electric. Absolutely electric. And do you know what? There's been some back and forth about that guy who cried in the crowd.
I think it's disgraceful. I genuinely think that's disgraceful. That there's been back that he's been criticised. Yeah. But it's worked out for him, though, because if you heard, Tommy Dreamer is flying him out to Bound for Glory. And AEW are flying him out, I think, to either a Dynamite or a Rampage or both with tickets, and will meet Punk and the superstars backstage of AEW. Credit where credit is due to Khan and everybody else. Because for me, I'll tell you what, AEW at the moment is the pinnacle of professional wrestling. And whoever is in Khan's inner circle have just gone all out to making themselves an amazing professional wrestling company.
No.
Oh, come on. That was brilliant.
How long have you been sitting on those puns for?
Oh, quite a while. But, you know, I got no one to pun off, so I have to book it in when I've got a guest host. I have to put the puns in as much as I can. So that was quite good.
No, I'll give you credit where credit's due.
I couldn't get MGF in there, or else I would have done. But, you know, there we go. Right, let's do it. Let's talk about the man of the hour. He's not too sweet to be sour, and he's not funky like a monkey, because that's Randy Macho Man Savage. But he is a heartbreaker. He's the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. And just like the Owen Hart show that Dan and I did a couple of weeks ago, we're not going to be looking back to when he was born in San Antonio or where he grew up. This is going to be talking about Shawn Michaels as a performer and what we remember of the Heartbreak Kid. So my question to you, Steve, is first of all, what is your first memory of HBK Shawn Michaels?
Well, you see, here you go. And I think you know this story already. My mum, the reason I watched wrestling, I got into wrestling, is because my mum is a massive Shawn Michaels fan. So,
how?
Yeah, all those years ago, there was a VHS tape in the player ready to press record for when the Rockers came on the telly. So like my earliest memories of them doing the double fist off the top turnbuckle, I was probably about 5, 6.
Right.
So to say an earliest memory of Shawn Michaels is, you know, no exaggeration to go back to probably I was 6 or 7. Not in a relevant kind of first memory, but yeah, to have that first memory of Shawn Michaels is mum, like, because she fancied the art of him, really. So she would always record everything. She was always her, you know, to her, he was the Heartbreak Kid anyway.
How did your mum even get into knowing about Shawn Michaels? Where did she hear about the WWF?
See, my mum and my dad both watched wrestling.
Oh, okay.
And they always had some kind of Sky kind of dish thing, whatever it was back then in all those times. I remember it being a spinny dial on the wall. Mad stuff, but they were always massive wrestling fans. And one of my first sort of earlier kind of things I remember of wrestling being big was the WrestleMania 6 main event. And I remember my mum turning around at that point and telling me that Hogan's losing because he's too old. I thought, that's WrestleMania 6, Mum, and he's still frigging going.
Yeah, we wish it was his last match and he didn't go. I mean, he went off to do Suburban Commando at that point. Yeah. So, you know, that's amazing if that's the first memory that you can remember is your mum, who I've met, who's lovely, watching the Rockers and Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty in tag action. For me, I think my first proper memory of Shawn Michaels, forgetting the tag team stuff, because I think that's really easy to forget, right? Because we remember Shawn Michaels really as the solo Heartbreak Kid, the you know, most valuable player at WrestleMania, Mr. WrestleMania. But if you go back to that, I'm going to go back to 1991. I've got 2 things. The first one was watching the Rockers against the Orient Express at the Royal Rumble of 1991, which was an incredible match and far ahead of its time. Tanaka and Tenryu and Tanaka. And the second one was that moment that is still replayed to this day. And it's on WWF Superstars, where Michaels put Jannetty through the barbershop window with Brutus the Barber Beefcake. And you remember it, I think, for 2 reasons. One, for 1991, that was so violent and not something that you would have expected at 1 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon on Sky One. And the second one is because it was the Rockers being broken up. It was the biggest tag team, or one of the most over tag team at the time, no more. And this new attitude of Shawn Michaels.
Well, I remember because I was 10 when that happened. And by the time we'd actually moved down to Bournemouth, because we were sort of Essex, London based. And it actually wasn't that long after we moved down here. But I remember turning around to my mum and went, I thought Shawn Michaels was your favourite. Well, he's just put Mighty Jannetty through a window. Like, proper kid attitude. Like, how can you like him? Like, proper... Do you know, I miss being a wrestling fan like that sometimes.
Yeah.
I think it's just all innocence. But, I remember turning around to, saying to my mum, have you seen this? Like, I had a proper strong Essex accent then as well. Shawn Michaels just put Mighty Jannetty through the glass.
I mean, it was just, you've never seen anything like it. They were trying to get a bit more risky, weren't they, at that point, with Earthquake squashing Hogan and jumping on Damien the Snake when it was in the bag in 1990. But this was the first time you'd actually seen him put through glass. And the reaction of Brutus the Barber Beefcake with the new face was, ladies and gentlemen, the Rockers. Uh-oh. It was just marvelous. And then it was the evolution of that character.
One thing you've got to remember about that thing, though, and this was incredible, I thought, was Bobby Brain Heenan. Because when he hit him with
incredible anyway.
I knew he was going to do that. I was just like, yeah, you did, you legend.
But I think if you think about Shawn Michaels after this point being paired up with Sensational Sherry and the boy toy image and the crop pants and the new look in the mirror and that egotistical side of him coming out, I think even in 1992, we knew we were going to be getting a future main event to get a world title shot against the heavyweight champion, the Hitman Bret Hart, at Survivor Series 92 in a ladder match, may I say, was unrivaled at that point.
I think, he thanks a lot of his success, his early success, to Sherry, and doesn't believe that he probably would have got as far as he did without her to start with. And apparently, she was quite a supporter of his in AWA as well.
Yeah, I think you can see that though. I think you can see that there's that mutual.
There was a real natural chemistry between those two.
Yeah.
And, the whole idea that she was scary Sherry and all that sort of stuff, and he'd sort of just shove her down and then just stand over her and, quite toxic masculinity.
Quite Handmaid's Tale to a degree.
Yeah. It really drove his character home.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm the Heartbreak Kid. I can do whatever I like.
Yeah. And
she's still going to follow me.
Yeah, but you say that, and then in December of 1992, end of November, beginning of December, Jannetty comes back and has the mirror and goes to smash it over the head of Shawn Michaels, who you can see physically pull Sherry into the way. And that, of course, builds up the match at the Royal Rumble of 93, which was Michaels versus Jannetty, with Sherry on the line, so to speak. Which corner is Sensational Sherry going to go in?
Whose corner is she going to be in? Yeah.
But again, at that point, Jannetty had his demons and had been gone from the WWF for a while, and Michaels had really kind of set himself up as a platform. But to see the two tag team specialists together in the ring, competing against one another, really was what tag team wrestling and fans of the Rockers wanted to see.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with it, to be honest. And you know what? You alluded to there, Mike Jannetty having his demons and stuff. And I think this is what frustrates me when people say, when a tag team breaks up, is it going to be the Michaels or the Jannetty? Whereas I think, had maybe Jannetty's demons not been as strong and overtaken as they were, I think he could have had quite a lot of success himself. Very talented individual. He's just had some issues that he just didn't deal with. Shawn Michaels didn't deal with his for a long, long time. But managed to survive, shall we say. Function, but maybe not as well or as nicely as he could have done.
But you talk about that, though. Imagine if he had dealt with them. I mean, how great Michaels was towards, by the end of his career, even by the time he got to WrestleMania 14, in effectively his retirement match in 98 against Steve Austin. If he had dealt with them back in 92, 93, even 94 to a degree, how big could he have gone in those years afterwards? Would he have been more than the Intercontinental Champion?
Excuse me. Well, he was WWF champion, to be fair.
Yeah, but would he have been? What I'm saying is, would he have been more than just a 1 or 2 time WWF champion at that point?
I also think when you look at the time that he was holding the WWF title, it was a very difficult time to be the leader of that brand.
Yeah,
because WCW was beating them into a pulp. So I think that was a really difficult time to try and lead a brand where everyone was abandoning it in essence, and everything. And as Bischoff said, I think it was too cartoony and loud and over the top. And trying to be a leader of that brand probably had a lot of pressure on his shoulders. On top of everything else that he was dealing with, like, you know, he's spoken quite publicly about those things now.
And that's a fair comment, because you think about it, he's leading the company against his two best friends.
Yeah.
Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. Yeah, you know, Hunt is still in the WWF, but Hunt is nowhere near the level that he would be later on, right? But Hall and Nash have gone. You've had that whole Madison Square Garden curtain call incident. They've gone. They're in WCW. They're the NWO. They are leading with Hollywood Hogan, the biggest faction at that time in professional wrestling, the biggest game changer, the biggest moment, which has only been emulated since CM Punk on Rampage, the biggest monumental switch in professional wrestling. And that really is the changing of the guard. How do you go up against that? You know,
I think it was going to be an impossible task.
Yeah.
And I know Shawn Michaels reinvented himself in part with Triple H and that doing the DX angle, you know, later on. And I thought that, you know, that was the change. That was the edgy stuff, you know, and probably a lot of frustration from Shawn Michaels as well coming out at the same time. You know, probably you know, from what I've seen from his interviews, he wasn't happy creatively. He wasn't happy with himself or his lifestyle. You know, he was picking up injuries and not dealing with them. And just not in a good place whatsoever. And then you say, by the way, we're going to put the whole company on your shoulders as well. Yeah, I could imagine that was, you know, really, really, really tough to do.
Well, bear in mind, he did get to walk away from the WWF because there was Thursday Raw Thursday back in, I think it was, 1996, actually, where Michaels didn't want to drop the belt. So we gave it back.
So, yeah,
walked away.
The rumor was that he had an injured knee, didn't he?
Yeah.
They needed to get his knee back, and it was really important that he'd lost his smile. His mum had said, "You've lost your smile. I need to go back and find my smile."
The biggest comical line in the history of pro wrestling, because everybody took the mick out of him for that. You know, because he didn't want a job. I can't remember who he was going to job to.
Bret.
Was it going to be Bret? That makes sense.
That's why a lot of the argument about the Survivor Series screw job came about, because, like Bret said, but he wouldn't even do the job for me.
So why am I going to do the job for him? Yeah. And of course, you know, that leads us really nicely on to, you talk about controversy, you link that with Shawn Michaels, right?
Yes.
And November of 1997, 1997 is known for one thing. And you referenced it 2 minutes ago, the Montreal screw job. Montreal, Canada, Survivor Series of 97. We already knew Bret had signed a long-term contract with WCW. He was going. He wanted to drop the belt on Raw the next night. He didn't want to drop it to Michaels at Survivor Series. And then it happened. Earl Hebner rung the bell. Michaels had put him in the sharpshooter. It was done. Bret didn't tap, or so Bret says. Screw job occurred. Michaels walked out of Montreal as the World Wrestling Federation heavyweight champion, and Bret leaves the WWF really in controversy, swearing again never to do business with Vince.
See, I didn't understand what's going on then. I was like, why is everyone annoyed? Shawn's won, right? I didn't pick up on any of the screw job bit at that point.
Do you want to know something? Do you want to know something? At the time of watching it, neither did I.
No.
Because to me, it was just, he's put him in the sharpshooter and that's it, done. But now you look at it and you go, it's Becky Lynch versus Bianca Belair. It's a screw job finish, right?
Don't start me on that. I'll be talking about that on my show at Smarks and Ladders this week.
Okay.
Yeah, like, I was so shocked, one, that Bret had tapped out in the sharpshooter. I was like, that's weird. But Shawn Michaels is champ, and I was always have been a massive mark for Shawn Michaels anyway. I think whether I had a choice or not.
Yeah.
For a younger age. And you know, I was always a Shawn Michaels fan. And but yeah, the whole idea of that screw job never come across, you know, never thought at all. And then the interview with Vince McMahon the next night on Monday Night Raw, Bret screwed Bret. I'm still not getting it. I'm still watching it go, oh, right, yeah, but they're, you know, obviously because he's left, they're going to say whatever they want about him, because everyone knew, even the unsmart of smartest fans knew Bret was going.
Yeah.
And then later on to hear a story that actually when Shawn was going to put that sharpshooter on Brett, he had the wrong leg. And Brett told him in that moment, he called an audible and told him how to put the sharpshooter on, the sharpshooter that was going to screw him out of the title.
And you're still going, I don't get it.
Yeah, I'm still like lost. Concord.
You know those tumbleweeds earlier on?
Yeah, that's what's happening. They live up here.
I'm not making a comment. I'm not saying a word. It's safer if I don't say anything. But you're right. And that, again, really did change the face of the WWE at that point, because that was a heel Michaels. And he wasn't afraid to play off that controversy. And neither was McMahon to a degree, the birth of the Mr. McMahon character, which was also the beginning of the downfall of HBK, because it was only in March of 98 at WrestleMania 14 where he went up against the Texas Rattlesnake, Stone Cold Steve Austin, with the title on the line, with Iron Mike Tyson, that man who likes to be in WWE and AEW, was the enforcer and a member of DX, where Michaels lost the belt.
That's right.
And
so
Austin
Michael
got his first ring.
Had injured himself at the Rumble, didn't he, in the casket match with the Undertaker?
Yeah.
And had a broken back, I believe.
It was I don't know if it was broken, but it was severely injured.
Yeah.
Severely injured back. And there's that scene, I think it's on the WWE Network. It's either in one of the Michaels DVDs, one of the documentaries, or it's in the Monday Night Wars series or WrestleMania series, where they actually say Michaels was not a nice guy to be around. And at the end of that, he stormed out of the press conference, and the unseen footage is him walking past, shoving Shane McMahon, slamming the doors and walking straight out. And that would be the last time that you really would see Shawn Michaels, except for a couple of guest cameo spots as the commissioner or NWO Shawn Michaels.
Why?
Don't even want to go there. Until 2002. And he came back. And then we had the unsanctioned match, which to this day, I cannot wait until August of 2022, when that is 20 years old and I get to cover it. Because to be able to go back, any excuse to go back to that pay-per-view and watch that match, I'm up for it.
I think for me, it just... Okay, so I wasn't expecting much out of that. So these few years... Yeah, no, I wasn't at that point. You think there's a few years have gone past now. I'm a bit older now. I'm a bit more wiser to it. 2002. So, I was somewhere in my 20s. Yeah, early 20s. And, I'm a bit more wiser to it. And I'm thinking, Shawn's been away for like 4 years. There's no way he's come back and having a good match. I'm always have been a big fan of Triple H. And I thought even with someone like Triple H, who is just phenomenal, just incredible, just without a shadow of doubt. I thought, this is going to be tough. This is going to be difficult. Make it unsanctioned. Fair enough. You can push the boundaries a bit. But then again, I thought, this guy's going to get hurt. This guy's going to get hurt. He's been out for 4 odd years. He's an addiction to painkillers and many other stuff and substances and stuff. And he's going to come back and he's going to do a match. And not only that, it's going to be in an uncontrolled environment. I was like, this is mental. Just mental. And there's a big part of me going, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. Especially, I think a lot of people know my views on going too far hardcore match-wise.
Yeah.
I don't want to see this. What I will say is the end product of it was probably one of the best SummerSlam matches in history.
Yeah.
It was incredible. And it wasn't stupid.
No, it was done beautifully. And I think the fact that you mentioned there he had 4 years off and he hadn't been in the ring and he hadn't competed. And I was the same as you. I remember going, it's not going to be that good a match. But actually, who was he in with? He was in with his best friend, The Game. Those two would have sat there and prepped that match and rehearsed that match and got that match just how they wanted it. So it was ready to go. And I actually think being unsanctioned was a really good return for him because it meant that you didn't have to see him do the Shawn Michaels moves of old. He could be protected. But what we got following that, Steve, was what was meant to have been the odd shot here and there, the odd match, turned into a full-blown run again.
He came back
right the way up until 2010. 8 years.
An 8-year run. slightly part-time if you want to be a bit finicky about it. He would have times off here and there. I remember fun videos when Triple H would go and find him and bring him back and all this sort of stuff. But I thought, fair play to you. You've done your time now. You know, that after that SummerSlam, we had Survivor Series, first ever Elimination Chamber. Shawn Michaels wins it. First ever Elimination Chamber match.
With no gear.
First for Shawn Michaels. Another first.
Yeah. And I mean, and we're glossing over this because we haven't even touched, if you think about it, we've skipped the 1994 WrestleMania 10 ladder match with Scott Hall, Razor Ramon. We've missed the SummerSlam 95 rematch, again with Razor Ramon, Scott Hall, two of the greatest ladder matches of all time. We haven't even touched that because the problem is there is so much of Shawn Michaels' career to talk about. You could be here for hours, days, going through his matches because they're that good.
He's the first person to ever win the Royal Rumble from number one.
In 1995.
Yep. In that ladder match, that was the first person to ever win a televised ladder match.
Yeah.
He was the first winner of an Elimination Chamber.
Yep.
He was the first winner of Hell in a Cell.
Yep.
He was the first wrestler to wrestle in HD.
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there as well.
He was the first wrestler to compete against The Undertaker at back-to-back WrestleManias.
Yeah.
And deliver 5-star matches.
Yeah, always.
No, against the Undertaker at WrestleMania. Yeah. You know, it was because he did the double. Then it was Triple H who did the double.
Yeah.
And then you had CM Punk.
Yeah.
He delivered one of the greatest WrestleMania matches in Seattle at WrestleMania X19 with Y2J Chris Jericho in what was a tremendous back and forth story with a great emotion at the end of it. He wrestled CM Punk to some tremendous matches. The only thing I wish I'd seen was Michaels about 10 years later going up against the likes of AJ, Daniel Bryan.
Because that's my dream match.
Do you know what I mean? I would love to have seen him go up against some of the guys we've got now. You know, we talked about Adam Cole.
Is the match for me.
Yeah. We talked about Adam Cole at the beginning of the show. Can you imagine Adam Cole against the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels in his prime? Or Kenny Omega, the belt collector, against the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels? Or Danielson in his prime against HBK? Cody Rhodes.
I'm not a fan of Omega. But yeah, Bryan Danielson, definitely. We saw some Shawn Michaels, Cody Rhodes, to be fair.
We did, but not.
We had some DX versus Priceless stuff going on at one point.
Yeah, let's not talk about that.
Not particularly one-on-one, no.
No, but what was, you know, he was like Owen Hart. He was so far ahead of his time. He's one of those wrestlers that could have been dropped in any generation, and you would have had a 5-star match out of him. You know,
I do agree. I think he's just got something special. Actually, I wanted to ask you a question about the WrestleMania matches. Undertaker, Shawn Michaels 1 or Undertaker, Shawn Michaels 2?
Oh my God.
What was the better one? Because this is like the Marmite, if you love it or hate it, isn't it? It's a 50-50 split, I'm convinced.
Do you know what? That is really tricky because one set the scene. You know, one, you didn't think one could get any better. It couldn't be improved. And then I think you've got to, I'm waffling now because I'm trying to get out of giving an answer. But I think if you look at the build and then the entrance with the white and coming up like the angel with the white, and then the match, and then the ending of the match, it's got to be number 2.
I'm number 2 all the way. Sorry, I am. I think it was, like I said, I think match 1 was incredible. There's no doubt about it. These are probably 2 of the best WrestleMania matches. Yeah.
I just don't know how you could. If you made the ultimate WrestleMania card, right, of all the matches in how many WrestleManias there have been now? 38?
Yeah.
37? Yeah. 37, 38 WrestleManias. If you did the ultimate card of picked the best matches from all of those WrestleManias, you would have to have the 2 Michaels Undertaker matches on that card.
They're probably quite full up with a lot of Shawn Michaels matches, to be honest.
It would most likely be a Shawn Michaels tribute card, really, because you would have the WrestleMania 10 match, you would have the WrestleMania match with Ric Flair, the farewell, Old Yeller,
Rick,
I love you, super kick, pin.
Yeah. And you mentioned Jericho, Kurt Angle. That was
the
really good.
The triple threat at WrestleMania 20 with The Game, Canadian Wrestler X, and Shawn Michaels.
Can we not say his name on your show?
Chris Benoit. It was just a bit of old tongue because that's what we used to call him on TWS, was Canadian Wrestler X.
Kid.
Yeah. But, even that was a tremendous triple threat. What I'm glad about with Shawn Michaels, though, is apart from that one shot at Crown Jewel, he's kept to the retirement. He hasn't come out of retirement. Because I think too many performers now, and I'm talking guys like Terry Funk, Mick Foley, even, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and Hulk Hogan are now tarnishing the legacy that they already had by coming out of retirement and competing for that one more match. Yeah. Right. And actually, I think Michael saw really how bad he was at Crown Jewel. And that would have been the reason for him not to come back out of retirement. And what he's doing what he was doing with NXT, whatever NXT is going to look like going forward now, has been phenomenal because he's produced some of the best takeover matches for both NXT and NXT UK.
I think it's brilliant. I think, you know what? This is where I get a lot of respect for people because they're going back and giving something back. So you've got people like Shawn Michaels and you've got Prince Albert, whose real name is Matt Bloom. Some people that UK maybe never got even to the biggest stage, but have still got so much knowledge to give back. Of going back into NXT and the Performance Center, doing that stuff. It's like, give it back. You've had it now. Give it back a bit.
Yeah.
And it gives me nothing but respect, even more. I respected Shawn Michaels for many a year. But even more respect, although I wish he hadn't done that comeback in Saudi Arabia and just left it. I mean, I cut it off. That never happened as far as I'm concerned. It never happened. Kane's mask didn't fall off and his hair fell out and all that. None of that happened.
It was they got back on the flight and they came home before the match even started. They weren't stranded out there. Don't worry about that. As we begin to wrap up this look back on Shawn Michaels, summarize, or how could you summarize Shawn Michaels in just one word? What would it be?
Showstopper.
Very good. Very good. I think I would have gone.
Do that with one word.
Huh?
That's not easy to do with one word.
I know it's not. It's technically, it is technically two words, but I'll let you off. In wrestling vernacular, it's one word. I think I'm gonna cheat. I'm actually gonna use GOAT. Because I think, so many performers now are called the greatest of all time. Ric Flair, Steve Austin, the Hitman, Warrior, Hogan, Rock, Danielson. But to me, I don't think you can talk professional wrestling without having Michaels in that conversation at the top, if not at the top. Because it's very difficult, as we've said, to pick out a bad HBK match, to pick out a bad promo.
There's something I think that everyone in the business could learn from Shawn Michaels. One that GOAT is an acronym and not a word.
GOAT is technically a word. It's in the dictionary. It just doesn't mean the greatest of all time. Thank you very much.
But no, I think I don't think there's one single wrestler that can't say a bit of their something has come from Shawn Michaels in some way, whether it's the flair, the talking ability, aerial moves, the positivity now that you get from Shawn Michaels, the giving back, how to sell a match. Shawn Michaels is it. And I hear, lots of arguments about Ric Flair being the greatest of all time, like at the pinnacle. He's not. Shawn Michaels is that man for me. There is no one greater. And maybe it'll never eclipse. Maybe it will. Maybe we'll see that happen. But for me, Shawn Michaels is just it.
Yeah.
If someone says to you, what's wrestling? Shawn Michaels. That's what wrestling is.
And it's really unfortunate because if you say to some fans, what is professional wrestling? They go Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
Because that's, I know you're a Hogan fan, but But
Sarcasm.
that is, I know. But that's what it is, because everybody knew Hulk Hogan because he broke into the mainstream. Now they go John Cena or The Rock. But it's only the wrestling fans, the purists, the diehards, the Smark fans, those who listen to Ministry or TWS or Smarks and Ladders, that go Shawn Michaels. Because he is professional wrestling. He is Mr. WrestleMania. There won't be another one. Doesn't matter. The Undertaker was the undefeated Undertaker for God knows how many WrestleManias, but he wasn't Mr. WrestleMania. That was Shawn Michaels. And whatever happens, that will be his legacy that he leaves into professional wrestling.
Absolutely. He is the showstopper.
The Heartbreak Kid. The icon.
He's everything and more.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I'm actually glad he left when he did with the Undertaker match, because I think he was not going to get any above that. And it was, I think you alluded to as well, it was only going to drop.
Yeah, I think he knew the end was coming.
Yeah,
and
call it a day, and he did.
But even like Edge, he left because of injury, but then he's come back 9 years later, or however many years it was since the injury. Edge isn't the same. Now, I think we can all agree with that. Edge isn't the same Edge as what he was before the injury. Is he tarnishing the legacy? Quite possibly. Michaels, doesn't matter how much money McMahon is offering him, and you've got to admit that is going to be a lot. Is stuck to his guns, and fair play to him. Shawn Michaels, the greatest of all time, or if you want it in one word, GOAT, and not the variety. Right, we're going to wrap it up, but before we do that, let's give you some details one more time. If you want to subscribe to Retro Chat, you can do. All you need to do is go to Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or go to the website, retrochat.co.uk, click subscribe, and while you're there, leave us a review, because the more reviews you give us, the more recommendations you go, the further up the rankings we go in the charts, and the more I can beat Smarks and Ladders. If you want to follow us on social media, you can do. Facebook and Instagram is Retro Chat Podcast. You can tweet us. I'm really active on Twitter at the moment, at Retro Chat Pod. YouTube, Retro Chat Podcast UK. Twitch as well, Retro Chat Podcast. And we're going to be playing all of the videos of the shows on our Twitch feed at the same time as we put them on YouTube. So you can watch us in multiple different ways. Don't forget, NWA Power is on Fight every week. You can subscribe to that and be a part of that. And if you want to listen to another wrestling show, then you listen to friend of the show, Smarks and Ladders, available every Thursday on all main podcast providers, which is featuring Steve, his co-host, the occasional MC with socks, and quite possibly me at some point, potentially.
Someone really wants to get on my show, don't they? God.
If he pays my fee, which is
like there's a fee,
pretty much free.
Get it, Andy, you give it away for free.
You're not meant to tell people that. That's going to ruin my reputation as the tight ass. That's it, Steve. Thanks for joining us. Any last comments, my friend?
Yeah, absolutely. Don't forget, like Andy said, you can follow us on Twitter, S&L Podcast, or Smarks and Ladders on Instagram and Facebook. We do love to hear back from you guys. So it'd be great. The podcasts, generally speaking, 9 out of 10 times are available from the Thursday morning, like they will be every single week. The most latest show that will probably be up will be a review of SummerSlam and a proper look at CM Punk's debut on page as well. So thank you, Andy. It's been amazing to be on the show. I will get you onto the Smarks and Ladders at some point soon. We'll sit and arrange an interview at some point.
I'll believe it when I see it. You know, Dan's been on. I expect Toby's been on before me as well. I'll just believe it when I see it.
I'll make sure I book him first, just for you.
Ah, you bugger. Speaking of Mr. Barnstall, our next show that we're going to be releasing here on Retro Chat is going to be a Star Trek special. We're going to be covering the Deep Space Nine classic episode, Far Beyond the Stars, one of the most amazing shows set in an era of racism. We're going to be talking about that in much more detail with Dan on the next episode of Retro Chat. And then, I'm really excited about this one, we're going to go back to the Star Trek universe, to the Next Generation, to the finale of season 3, the beginning of season 4. the biggest two-parter in Trek history, the best of both worlds, where we're going to be breaking that down and talking about the Battle of War 359, Locutus of Borg, its reception, why they turned Captain Picard into a Borg, and why he almost didn't come back. That's the next 2 weeks right here on Retro Chat, every Monday, plus bonus shows on a Friday, Legends and Champions, Masters of the Universe Chronicles with Chris Vint. Oh man, so much more. TSC from the Vault, some 2 men, and if Dan will ever give me them, some 2 men and then some TWS archive footage as well. Trying to get him off him is like trying to get candy from a baby. Very, very tough.
Wow.
There we go. Yeah, there we go.
Have you finished your verbal diarrhea now?
I have now. Yes, this is what I do. I host a solo show. I have no one else to talk to. Steve, it's been
such a treat then. Oh, such a treat.
I know. Steve, it's been a pleasure. Stay tuned for more of us from here at the Retro Chat. Steve's down the line for me for just a minute. We'll be back with more next week. Until then, thank you so much for joining us. Speak to you all very soon. Until then, bye-bye.